All right, it's 10 o'clock. Let's give everybody one more minute here. It is a rainy Saturday. All right, we'll get going. I don't want to waste anyone's time on a Saturday here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this District 109 virtual town hall. It's a great team effort here organizing this. The goal of this, as you'll see in the upcoming slides here and in Q&A, is to give you answers to any questions that you may not have had by now. We know families have a really big decision ahead of them by Monday at 9 a.m. And we're here to provide you with as much support and information as we can, knowing that we're in a pandemic and it all changes by the week, by the hour. So let us take the next hour here to answer any questions you have. Dale, if you want to move on to the next slide for me, please. We have a panel today that spans the gambit of the district. Ryan Kuo and Sari Montgomery are joining us from the Board of Education. Danielle Arnold, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, is going to be talking about the scheduling, the hybrid scheduling. There's been a lot of questions about that. Joanna Ford, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, will talk about the school exclusion scenarios and kind of some of the what ifs if kids get sick at school. John Filippi, our business manager, who was also the reopening committee chair, that's the summer 2020 committee, will talk about some of the infrastructure and HVAC sort of questions. Dale Fisher, our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, knows a little bit about everything. He's going to be here kind of maneuvering the presentation, but also available to answer questions. And then Eileen Brett, the principal of Wilmot Elementary School, is here representing our building leaders, who put out a really nice video yesterday. She's going to talk about how the buildings are ready. And I'm Eric Steckling, the Director of Communications. I will be facilitating questions and the discussion as we go on here. Next slide, Dale. Today's format, we will move through several topics, as I touched on there. There's kind of three big ones we'll talk about with the scheduling and the health and safety things, but we do want to hear any other general questions or concerns. Please submit your questions in the Q&A box below. I'm starting to see some come in now, so thank you for that. We also do have a list of questions that have been submitted to the task force email, to the DPS Facebook page, and to the task force. So we do have plenty of questions. In case you're need a few minutes to get going here, we can definitely get the conversation going. So on to the next slide. Why are we here? Obviously, students are switching to an AM/PM hybrid schedule. That's all students coming up as we transition as a district. You are choosing if that will take place for your student in person for half of the day or will be entirely virtual. Commitment forms are due Monday at 9 a.m. And just to remind everyone of the dates, kindergarten is tentatively slated to come back on September 24th, first and second grade September 27th, third grade October 1st, and fourth and fifth grades October 5th. So that's kind of the general overview of things. I'm going to turn it over now to Danielle Arnold to kind of talk about this whole AM/PM hybrid. There's a lot of terminology, Danielle. Simplify it for us.
All right, I'm going to try to be brief because this is very similar to some of the things that have already been covered in the board meeting and were also pushed out in the video that was sent from a letter from the superintendents recently. But I do want to clarify some things that we're still hearing as questions. So in this slide, you're actually seeing what an AM/PM hybrid schedule might look like from a student's view. The gray is what might be occurring in person or virtually live with a teacher. What is highlighted in red are the things that would be occurring synchronously for students on the opposite part of the day. And the things that are in white are the things that might be happening independently or asynchronously through videos or assignments that have been provided by the teacher through Google Classroom and Seesaw. So what you see there in the morning, if your child is an AM session attendee, they would be in person or virtually connected to their classroom teacher from 8:40 to 11:05. And then on the opposite side of the day is when they would meet with their specials teachers. They would have 2 specials sessions, and then they would have independent work, again, provided by the classroom teacher. The opposite applies for a student who is assigned to the PM session. They would start their day with some independent practice. They would have some specials provided to them live and some independent practice as follow-up from the previous day, also provided by the classroom teacher. And then they would come into our buildings, or they would connect virtually live with their teacher in the afternoon from 1 to 3:25. So it's a 2-hour and 25-minute instructional block where they're getting most of their core instruction, and that's going to occur directly with the classroom teacher no matter what. We'll go ahead and flip to the next slide. So really, when you're making this choice for your child and determining what's best for the child and for your family, you should be assured that most of it is similar. All kids are getting 60 minutes of virtual specials that are going to occur in a virtually live environment, and they'll have a live connection with adults in their building. They're going to get that same independent practice in reading, math, and writing that's going to be provided by their assigned classroom teacher. We're going to continue to use the virtual platforms that we have thus far in 109 online. And they're going to have access to science and SEL lessons that are provided to them asynchronously. The things that you see there at the bottom are questions that I know Joanna and I have both received. Like, no matter your choice, we're accommodating. We will still be providing the same services that we have for special education related services and for students who have previously been assigned to 5th grade TAP math. That will occur no matter your choice. So really the only difference that you're making in making this selection is, do you want that 145 minutes, 2 hours and 25 minutes to occur virtually via Zoom, or do you want your child to come to school and be in the classroom receiving that 2 hour and 25 minutes from their teacher live in the classroom? We've been asked to quite a bit, probably, about why do both of these follow a hybrid model? Why I really loved 109 online. Why can't I just stay in that all day learning model instead of shifting to an AM PM? Because we've shared a little bit about the changes in the slight changes in instructional minutes. But truly, this is taking a systems approach. All of our teachers and administrators and our support staff are working together to make this happen for all kids and still honoring the choice of our families. Our classroom teachers, instead of meeting with a full group all day, will be working on both ends of the day, serving half of their student population. And our specials teachers will be doing the same. Some people have asked about how that specials conversation is actually working, because when you split the kids in half, they've said, well, doesn't that mean a double expectation for our specials teachers? And what our principals have done is sometimes pair classrooms together for the virtual sessions, because we can still do that safely. And it's absolutely okay to put half of students from classroom A with half of the students from classroom B and still have a fairly typical class size. So it is like putting pieces of a puzzle together, but it has taken a systems approach to make this work. In late July and early August, people made commitments to the district at that time about their choice, and we went ahead and formed the existing remote classrooms based on those numbers, and we created the classrooms that we currently have and the placements based on the potential for a return to in-person at some point. Now that we're kind of opening up this opportunity for people to have another choice, there are going to be the possibility of some changes. What we're going to have to do is look at class sizes, look at the number of families that are now newly choosing remote, and there may be some shifting that has to occur to keep everyone safe that's returning in person, and to also give those families and students that are choosing to stay remote a viable curricular option. And the hybrid model will work for both of those. And then some questions that have come in specific to the hybrid model that I just wanted to go ahead and address up front. People have been asking, when will I learn of my child's AM PM placement of a teacher? The reason that we've asked for the survey to close on Monday at 9 a.m. is to give our principals time to work with all of us to really adapt those schedules and make some changes. So that we can turn around that information to our families that same week, by the end of the same week on Friday, September 18th. Some people have asked, well, can I know who my classroom's teacher, can I know the potential for who might be the remote teachers before making our selection? And the truth is, we can't wait. We need to know what's going to be best for your child and family so that we can proactively plan for all of those sections. When will this hybrid model go into place? Again, the fact that we're moving to a hybrid approach and it takes the system all working cohesively at the same time means that all students will be shifting to the hybrid model, whether it be virtually or when they return in the phase-in process on September 24th, when our kindergartners move into in-person learning. So on September 24th, you can expect, no matter if your child is in kindergarten through grade 5, that we'll be shifting to that hybrid approach and model. And you'll receive some additional communication about that from your school and your classroom teacher. We continue to get asked a little bit about the live streaming. I addressed this briefly in the board meeting the other night, but just wanted to reiterate that again. We have considered all possibilities and all options in this environment that we're working through. But at this time, we as a district have decided that we want our teachers to really focus on ensuring the safety of their kids in their classroom and maximizing those 2 hours and 25 minutes of instruction with kids. And toggling between both learning environments has proven complex for some of our kids. And we really just want to focus on doing the right, focus on one instead of trying to toggle through both at the same time. And then the final question that I wanted to address is about the quarantine. If your child is quarantined for 10 to 14 days individually, what will happen for that child? And just wanted to let families know that what will happen is you'll still receive assignments and you'll still receive everything that is provided in terms of learning through the platforms of Google Classroom or Seesaw. The kids will still be invited to attend the specials, the live specials that are occurring virtually on one part of the day that they typically would attend with their other classmates. And then in addition to that, we will be working with district level teachers to provide 2 instructional blocks. The first will be at 11:15 to 12:15, and that'll be an English language arts block specific to the content covered at that grade level. And then math on the opposite side of the day from 3:30 to 4:30. We have done a outstanding job, I think, in the district with our instructional coaches and curriculum specialists and teachers working very cohesively to have an aligned scope and sequence for curriculum. So we have instructional plans, long-range planners that everybody's working from, and we feel assured that no matter the teacher during that quarantine, that we could provide the same level of instruction.
All right, Danielle, so let's take a minute. You knew you were going to get most of the questions today, so I hope you're ready. I hope you had your coffee. Let's just quash this right now, because I think this is a rumor that's been going out there, and I think it's important to speak this into existence again. Remote/virtual/ not physically going to school is always going to be an option. You could start your kindergartner on September 24th and 2 weeks later say, for whatever reason, we need to go back to virtual learning. There will be a transition process that goes with it, right? But all year long, going back to virtual is always going to be an option.
Yeah, I mean, the Illinois State Board of Education has asked districts to keep the virtual option available. The one thing I want people to know, I mean, obviously we're going to do that, but like you said, there would be some transitional delay, and we will have remote classrooms and teachers. So there is the potential again for that another teacher change if moving in that direction, but we're going to follow the advice and guidance and continue to make that an option for our families.
And I think that's an important thing for people to know, right? You kind of touched on this. Every time you make a change, we are giving choices and options, but it doesn't just impact you, it impacts the system. Your kid is not a class of 1, they're in a class of 20.
Yeah, as all of you that are listening can probably imagine, we're getting lots of individual requests or lots of individual ideas and things that are specific, but we are trying to think of this holistically, and we have to plan and execute that plan as an entire system. And so, certainly while listening and hearing all of the individual requests, we're really trying to be strategic and meeting the needs of the many.
And let me throw out one mistake I already made on one slide. I had said a return date for 1st and 2nd grade was the 27th. That's a Sunday. They're not coming to school on a Sunday. It's the 29th. Everything is right online. That was a midnight mistake on a slide there. So Danielle, there's also been a question about if the whole district shifts back to remote learning, virtual learning, why can't we revert back to 109 online? Why does it have to be this hybrid AM/PM situation?
We've had a lot of discussion about that too, and that's a really great question. I think we hope, you know, if the district would resume an all remote status and have to move into that, that it would be short term, you know, that we would be moving into a remote for a brief amount of time and hopefully being able to transition our kids back to in person relatively quickly. So with that thought in mind, it's really important to us that we create structure and stability for our kids, and that we don't continuously like move in and out of platforms and schedule changes and so forth. So at this point, we think if we move into remote, we would maintain this schedule and structure. We would maintain the hybrid, assuming that it was going to be a short-term remote only option for our entire district. Certainly, if we were faced with something in the spring, like where we went out thinking we were going to be out of school for 2 weeks and then learned, you know, quickly that we were going to be out for the remainder of the school year, we can certainly pivot and change the instructional model at that time when we knew it was going to be a long-term. But until we knew there was going to be a long-term closure, we would want to maintain the schedule that we're putting in place now.
And, you know, there is a little bit of confusion around specials. Of the 60 minutes, how much is synchronous, how much is asynchronous? Can you just kind of clear that up?
Yeah, so at those 60 minutes, the specials teachers will be connecting both times. They're going to be providing, in one 30-minute block, they're going to be providing direct instruction, like actually teaching a live video, or sorry, a live lesson to students. And then the other 30 minutes that students have, the teacher will still be synchronously and live connecting, but they may be walking them through or just available to support them in an independent instructional task. So the 60 minutes that are available on the opposite side of the day, they will have access to a specialist teacher. The teacher will be live with them on Zoom. The instruction looks slightly different.
Okay. Let's see. So, you know, here's kind of a more complicated question, and I'll open it up to both Danielle and possibly Dale. If more virtual teachers are required, why can't the in-place virtual teachers just teach one more section? For example, if there are 25 fifth graders that have virtual learning and 20 new students who elect virtual learning, can't the 25 students stay with their teachers in the AM while the 20 new students join onto that same teacher in the PM? You know, why can't we necessarily just add more kids to a particular teacher?
I'll take this first and Dale can add on. But what we've tried to do really, and I've said this in a couple of different forms, is that those families and students made a choice in late July and early August, and we're not trying to unfairly create a structure for any of them. It's interesting that we get a variation of requests about that existing remote only classroom, but our goal in this district would never be to double class size and assign 50 students to a single teacher who would then have to provide, you know, very targeted feedback and instruction to that size of a cohort. So what we've tried to do, and will continue to try to do for those remote only sections, is maintain our standard class sizes, which tend to be 25 or below.
And kind of speaking of class size, Dale, did you want to jump in? I'm sorry.
I was going to say perfectly responded. I mean, there are, Danielle found a nice way to say there are also contractual limitations on going above certain levels in class sizes. So those virtual classes, it's to my understanding, working with Danielle and the principals, that they're kind of maxed out. I mean, there's not much space to be able to put into those classes at this point. We staff that look accordingly at the time. So we're not able to add many more students to those classes if that was the option.
And this kind of goes along with another theme I've seen. Is there a max, a cap on newly created virtual sections? I think all of this, right, depends on how many people pick that option. We can't right now say we're going to cut off the new virtual classes at 15, 20, 25 kids. It all depends on the numbers, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And planning, again, strategically and in a similar fashion to how we'll plan for those who choose the in-person return. All depends on class sizes and the number of people electing that option.
Okay.
Danielle, and doesn't let me just jump in. It also depends on, you know, where those students are located, right? I mean, the students who choose remote, whether they're all concentrated in one building or across grade levels, or, I mean, it's just a huge jigsaw puzzle that you have to deal with. And we won't know how those pieces are going to fit until we know how many kids are going to choose the remote and where they're all situated, grade-wise and building-wise.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, we have some variance, obviously, in class sizes, not huge variance, but there might be 17 in a section at South Park, whereas there's 23 in a section at Wilmot. If we have a large cohort pull from a particular building, then we would obviously need to look at that building and that those classes to see how we would juggle there. But we have to know where kids are coming from and who is electing to go remote to make all of that work, hence the Monday timeline.
Danielle, two quick things for you. We could spend the whole hour with you, but we got to move on to other people too. So the next opportunity to revisit remote versus in-person on a larger scale right now, the plan is winter break.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're asking, I mean, again, this goes back to being able to create a plan and execute it well. So right now we're asking for commitments through winter break, and then obviously we'll be surveying families again for how they would like to resume after winter break.
And then I get it. I wouldn't want my 3-year-old's teacher to change. This is the number one question. Is there any strategy, any technique? If you choose A, choose B, choose C, do whatever you want to do, any way right now that you can minimize the chance of your teacher being changed? And we really just won't know until these numbers come in, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there really is no way to sort of play this because really everybody's decision is kind of in it's depending on everyone else's. I mean, again, it goes back to we're all a system, and that includes our parents and our community.
All right, Danielle, I'm sure we'll come back to you, but let's kick it over to Joanna Ford to talk about school exclusion scenarios.
Thanks, Eric. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about school exclusion scenarios, and this is perfect timing because as recent as just a day or two ago, we actually got an update from the IDPH in terms of these scenarios. So just a few general statements about this. There's a couple of main categories that we consider when talking about exclusion scenarios, and those are, we're considering if a student or staff member does test positive for COVID-19, so we'll touch on that. If someone shows any signs or symptoms of illness, or if they've been in close contact. So those are the main criteria that we'll talk about when we're considering potential school exclusion scenarios. Other thing we want to mention, and you've heard this from the school administration, from our board, that we need you to, it's a community effort. Please report any possible or confirmed cases as soon as possible to the school because we need to immediately initiate potential contact tracing. We need your help. We need to partner together to protect the health of our community, of our staff, of our students, and our families. Please know that we'll communicate with you directly regarding any necessary exclusion periods, and most importantly, how we can have our students and our staff return to school as soon as possible and as safely as possible. And we'll also touch on within the environment, the procedures and protocols about what we'll do if someone presents with symptoms when they're here at school. Dale, if you can go over to the next slide. I know this is impossible to read from a distance, so please know that this is up on the website, and this is as of September 10th. This is the most recent update from IDPH. So you don't need to be able to read, I wanted you to have the visual as I'm talking through this. So like I said, there's a few categories when you're thinking about school exclusion scenarios. And please know, as we're preparing to bring our students back to school in grade level cohorts, for those of you who are electing in person for the hybrid model, you'll be getting detailed information from our each building and from the district office that will kind of go into further detail about these exclusion scenarios, as well as walk you through the process for self-certification. So you'll be creating screencasts so you can process and practice what that'll look like, and then kind of give you specific examples. I also want you to know that these are general buckets for school exclusion, but there's very individual situations. So we are more than happy to talk to you ahead of time. If your child has any specific health needs, please reach out. Reach out to your building nurse, reach out to the building administrators. You can reach out to me and my department because we'd love to problem solve those scenarios ahead of time with you and see if it's applicable to your child's health plan, their 504, their IEP, if there's anything we need to create. So please do not hesitate to call ahead of time. Okay, let's run through a couple things quickly and then I'll answer any questions that I can field right now. If there is, all the way over on the left, the pink column, if there is a in fact a confirmed positive, right? So if a student or staff member does in fact test positive for COVID-19, we are dealing with that person, that individual, 10 days, at least 10 days that they would be excluded from school for a positive test. And you can read when you go home and click on this link if you're there, that that's going to be from the onset of symptoms or from when they received that positive test. The other category, which is kind of the next 3 columns, are dealing with someone presenting with symptoms. So that would be either when, as a parent, you're completing the self-certification, or if a child presents with symptoms in the school setting. And the differing scenarios here are if that child, once they present with a symptom, if they have any further clinical evaluation or diagnostic testing. So I'm actually going to start with the kind of peach column, column D. If they do not have any further clinical evaluation or diagnostic testing, they are going to be excluded from school for at least 10 calendar days. If they do have further evaluation or diagnostic testing, they can come back to school sooner, meaning that they have a negative COVID test, or if there's a medical evaluation saying it's something other than COVID, which is causing them to present with these symptoms. So that's good news, right? That we know that kids do not necessarily have to be excluded for all 10 of those days just because they're presenting with one of those symptoms, if we know that it's either a negative COVID test or something else that's causing them to present with those symptoms. The other update as of this most recent chart that we received just a few days ago is that they've clarified, they did add a new symptom, but they've also clarified a little bit for the symptoms. So they're listed above, and the only thing I want to note, and then like I said, you'll be receiving a lot more detail from us prior to your child returning in person, is that you probably have the symptoms memorized by now. You've heard them many times, but for example, the symptoms were listed as cough, sore throat, vomiting, diarrhea, etc. They've added the clarifying word of new cough, new congestion, runny nose, meaning that when you go to self-certify or when a child presents at our nurse's office, for example, we are going to be able to diagnostically evaluate, is that a new cough, or is it a cough that the child has consistently had on account of an existing medical condition, such as allergies that may be causing their congestion or runny nose. So that being said, that also ties into the importance of us having documentation if your child has a pre-existing medical condition that may cause them to have any of those symptoms on an ongoing basis, and that's why they may be presenting with them. So please reach out if you have questions about any of that necessary documentation and what we would need to have on file if our nurses don't already. The other column, all the way over there at the right in green, column E, is if a child or a staff member is asymptomatic, but they've been in close contact with a confirmed or probable COVID-19 case. So that could happen either outside of school or in the school setting. If there's a confirmed case and we determine in partnership with the Lake County Health Department that your child or one of our staff members was in fact considered to be in close contact with that confirmed probable case. That's actually the most restrictive of the exclusion scenarios, because that student or that staff member will be asked to be excluded for 14 days. And there is no way to return sooner than that 14 days. That's why that's the most restrictive of the exclusion scenarios, if you are in fact a close contact to that confirmed case. That's a quick crash course in the exclusion scenarios. We will, like I said, be giving you more detail, and these do change fast and furious, so we will absolutely keep this updated for you and let you know every time that there is an update to them.
You're right about it. Fast and furious, Joanna. I think you're in my office every 5 hours giving me an update of this chart. So thank you. You also have a lot of questions here. In the event, maybe you can go into greater detail. In the event one kid in a classroom is diagnosed positive with COVID-19, what's the plan for the other children? How will the notification happen? Let's start in the classroom, then maybe in the building, then across the district. What will or will not happen?
So you're going to be getting more detail from us, like I said, within the next week about what that notification process would look like, in terms of who exactly will be receiving notification. What I can tell you right now is absolutely anybody who's within close contact of that positive individual, of course, will be receiving immediate notification, both from the district and then from the Lake County Health Department, because that would be requiring a quarantine. And then you'll be receiving more information from the district in the upcoming week about what overall notification procedures will look like.
Okay. Familial things. Okay, here's a question. What happens if you have a third grader that doesn't feel well? They go to the nurse, they're presenting with symptoms. They have a sibling that's in another grade that's totally fine. Does that sibling automatically get pulled?
Yeah, so this is a great question. This has been a hot topic. So this was actually clarified by IDPH, and they have frequently asked questions posted on their website. And this was, in fact, one that they said, yes, family does need to be considered if you do have someone presenting with symptoms. I think this was actually one of the big reasons why they came out and clarified these symptoms of saying new cough, right? New headache, new congestion, runny nose. So my recommendation on this is we really want to make sure when you're doing that self-certification, obviously we are relying on our families to be open, honest, and transparent with us. And we don't want to be calling and, saying that your child needed to be isolated at school, along with potentially siblings then in that scenario, for you to have to come pick them up immediately and then have them have further evaluation. And, we want to be ahead of this process in terms of partnering with our families. So if your child is not feeling well, the best thing to do is obviously complete that self-certification. Honestly, we will speak to you in the morning about your child, any siblings, and talk you through what the necessary next steps and documentation would be to hopefully get everybody back to school as quickly as possible.
I don't think you can repeat this enough. Define close contact for people again, just because.
Get ready and highlighted to read you the definition.
Go ahead, got it, go for it.
All right, a close contact is anyone with or without a face covering who was within 6 feet of a confirmed case of COVID-19 for at least 15 minutes throughout the course of a day. So, there are exceptions to that too. If we had a symptomatic individual potentially who we thought was sneezing, for example, right? So if we said within a classroom setting, we were confident that students were 6 feet apart in a certain classroom, that we said your child might not have been within close contact, but we wouldn't be disclosing this information, obviously, in terms of confidentiality. But if we knew a child was symptomatic, that might be a situation where people other than a close contact might be asked to quarantine. So we will use, obviously, health and safety is our absolute top priority in terms of determining who we would or would not ask to quarantine, but we will be following, very carefully, who the absolute close contacts are, and that definition is 6 feet of a confirmed case for at least 15 minutes throughout the course of a day.
Okay, you were prepared for that. This is half Joanna, half Dale. A lot of questions coming in about subs. Are there enough subs available? What happens if teachers get sick? Can we walk through that process?
Yeah, we were very proactive in the spring and treated our substitute teachers of the district very well and took care of them when we were shutting down. So there is a sense of loyalty that I will describe to those who are listening in from our subs, that we feel confident we have an adequate sub pool. Does that mean I can guarantee that we'll have subs every day? Even when we weren't in a pandemic, there would be sub shortages because there's a teacher shortage across the country right now. Are we in better shape than some other areas? Yes. But we have been working with our sub pool to train them on how to use the technology. Our Danielle's department, with the assistance of Scott Schwartz, have been very helpful in reaching out to subs and provide them with the tech tools to be on site and be able to proctor instruction for our students. But there's no guarantees. If things get out of control when it comes to other illnesses that could come down, just a typical cold flu season, we'll have to evaluate those situations as they come in. But at this point, we do have, as far as we're concerned, an adequate sub supply.
All right, masks. What are masks? Oh, I said the taboo word. Face coverings. I'm sorry. What happens if a kid won't wear a face covering? How are we handling that from a, do they get removed from school? Do they get set aside? There's been a few questions on that, Joanna.
Yeah, so again, in our reopening document, we've defined, and there's a link to CDC, which gives you kind of an overview of face coverings in terms of what is and is not acceptable and appropriate. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. They need to be snug and fit, appropriately. We've gotten questions specifically about gaiters, for example. Those don't fit snugly and fit appropriately, right? So we do have face coverings we can provide as a district, if we need to try alternate face coverings. If you have a concern right now that your child is not able to keep a face covering on, please reach out. We want to be problem solving this proactively. If we have a situation where there is not a medical need, it's not an individual circumstance, then we will be obviously not allowing a child to sit in a room without a face covering on, right? We will be working with our administrative team, immediately contacting parents, and we will be coming up with an appropriate alternative and exploring whether or not, it's going to be an option for that child to continue with in-person instruction. Certainly, there are individual circumstances, there are medical circumstances that are, individual and unique to certain students, but overall, obviously, children need to be able to have a face covering on in order to be in our buildings for in-person instruction. But like I said, please, please, please reach out to us right now if you have a concern about your child's ability to have a face covering on, because we want to talk to you about potentially different options in terms of face coverings that we have available, and we'll start experimenting with those right now that meet the appropriate guidelines and criteria.
Okay, last one for you, and then we'll keep moving on. And I've dealt with this as a parent. What if my kid wakes up with a fever or a sore throat? Nothing else. They seem generally fine. Do they have to be out for 10 days? Do they have to go get a negative COVID test? I mean, 5-year-olds are going to get any one of these symptoms many times throughout the year. What should parents do when one symptom presents?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So those are obviously on the symptom list. And if you look through, again, when we I know it's hard to read on it now, but those are not one that have the new right in front of it. So fever and sore throat, yeah, your child cannot come to school that day, right? So you need to be fever free for at least 24 hours. And we're going to need to, you have to then be in that situation where is it something other than COVID, or is there a negative COVID test, right? So when we look at those columns, when we say there needs to be further diagnostic testing or clinical evaluation, that's where when you're going to do the self screening in the morning and you're going to check those boxes, right? And then someone from our building is going to give you a call and walk you through, because obviously we want our kids in school, right? So we do not want children in that 10-day exclusion criteria period. So we're going to tell you these are the options. This is how we hopefully we'll get your child back in our buildings as soon as possible, and let you know how to do that.
Great. That's good peace of mind, because otherwise I think my 3-year-old's going to stay home all year long. Thanks, Joanna. Okay, let's move on. I believe Mr. John Filippi is next, talking about, oh, sorry, we already did that slide, basically. Safety modifications at school. John.
Very good. There are mitigations that fall into 4 broad categories. And just to build on what Joanna was talking about, the first, in terms of personal protective equipment, a face covering is required. And the district has been sourcing a variety of different types of face coverings since actually before we were even ordered to shelter in place in March, and that process has continued out through the summer months. So we have an ample supply of different types of face coverings. What's important is that the face covering that a student wears to school is fitting appropriately, as Joanna indicated. And like all of us have probably found, as we've ventured out from our homes and gone to the store and had to wear a face covering, different face coverings fit people differently, and some are more comfortable than others. We've tried to secure a variety of options if students are going to avail themselves of the options that we have available. But certainly if students have face coverings from home that are appropriate and meet the guidelines, they can use those. One of the things that we've tried to do is always go above and beyond what are the requirements, and have other pieces of PPE available for students and for staff. We've secured enough goggles for all of our students and staff should they wish to wear those as an additional step in mitigation. And we have available to us also a number of face shields. So we have quite the pool of PPE resources available for our staff and for our students. Social distancing is also an important component of bringing our students and staff back safely. And that's chiefly why the hybrid model is the model that makes sense. If you were to bring all students back, we wouldn't be able to achieve social distancing. We worked with the district's architect beginning in the summer months to evaluate our classrooms and to identify the best arrangement to promote social distancing. Even in a hybrid model, there are some circumstances where perfect 6-foot social distancing is not achievable. And in those instances, we've specified plexiglass barriers to be installed in those locations. And again, our architect did an analysis of all of our facilities and has identified the number of pieces that we need. We've secured all of those and then some. So even if a staff member or our students feel like something is on the borderline and they're uncomfortable, we have additional plexiglass that can be provided. In terms of custodial, we've ramped up our custodial services. We've reworked the schedule for our custodial services so that we have additional hands on deck during the school day. There are a couple of things that you will notice, or our students will notice as they come back to our facilities. Many of the high touch surfaces in our schools, the bars on a door that you would press, the lever on a door that you would pull, have been outfitted with a film that is constantly disinfecting. And those films are good for up to 30 days, and then we change them out. So it's a process where it's constantly disinfecting. If there are areas where we're unable to apply that film to like a doorknob or another high touch surface, our custodians are cleaning those on the hour. They're cleaning our bathrooms on the hour. And also between the AM and PM session, they're cleaning student desks and seating areas. We also use a product called Clorox 360. This is not a product that is new to us. We've been using it in our facilities for several years, but we have expanded its use. It's an electrostatic spray that we are able to use per the manufacturer's recommendations at 72-hour intervals. It's not something that we do during the school day when students or staff are present, but our custodial staff take care of this in the evenings. And this is a proven way to disinfect our facilities and keep them sanitized. Ventilation is a complex topic, and I will touch on a few things here, but I also want to reference that in our FAQ section, we've posted a comprehensive update about ventilation. Thinking about ventilation, there are really 3 primary mitigations. The first is increased fresh airflow. And the most basic way to think about that is you could increase fresh airflow in a facility by opening a window. But we know that that is not necessarily feasible when the temperature outside changes. And we know that we have classrooms within our facilities that don't have windows. But what we do have the ability to do through our HVAC system is continuously introduce fresh air throughout the facility. And the way that I describe it in layman's terms is think of it like opening up a window within the ductwork of the school so that it's able to pull that fresh air into the school. So that's one chief mitigation that we put in place. The other is where possible to increase filtration and use a higher MERV filter. That produces some challenges, is that systems in our school, in many commercial spaces, are not designed to run such a thick media filter as they recommend a MERV 13 or higher. So unfortunately, those cannot be adapted onto our systems. And they've also proven to be a supply chain issue. It's very difficult to acquire them. And then the third is disinfecting the air within our facility. And we've been researching and we've procured a system called bipolar ionization that has the potential to kill the virus and any other active bacteria that is being circulated through our HVAC system. So again, comprehensive update is also posted in our FAQ.
All right, and when he says comprehensive, it's long. John, when we talk about social distancing, you know, there have been a lot of questions about, you know, the principals put out that great video yesterday showing the desks apart. The expectation is going to be that when kids are in classrooms, they're pretty much staying at the desks. They're keeping their distance, none of this group work or kids getting together or anything like that.
That's correct.
Okay. Let's see if I have anything else for you. let's keep moving on because I do want to leave time for general questions. So let's move on to Eileen because John and Eileen's stuff kind of parlays into each other. So Eileen, if you want to talk from a building level standpoint, kind of how principals and buildings are preparing.
First of all, I'll say that all 4 of the elementary principals are in communication multiple times a day. So we are brainstorming and putting plans together. So we have really high levels of consistency between our buildings. Of course, the infrastructure, where our doors are, parking lots, affect what our individual buildings will look like. And that communication will come out to all parents from their building principal. But you can see it on the screen, there's a map. This happens to be Wilmot. And what I've identified and color coded is that all of our students will enter and exit the same door, morning and afternoon. And we have all of our grade levels coming in different doors. So there's a designated door for K, for 1, for 2. In some of our buildings, due to the number of doors, they may have 2 grades sharing a door, but it will never change. It will always be the same entrance and exit door each and every day. We've also are pulling in our entire staff to be on what we call duty at arrival and dismissal for both the morning and afternoon. So we will have additional staff outside assisting students from their buses to their entrance doors, assisting in our parking lots, as well as having staff in our hallways to ensure that as students come in the building, they go directly to their classroom and directly to their seat. Change in procedure for most of our students is that they will not stop and go to their lockers or their cubbies. If that's what they have, they'll take a seat in their classroom and then be dismissed in small groups by their teachers to go put their things if they need to in a locker or in a cubby so that we can maintain that 6 feet of social distancing. We also are putting in procedures for bathroom use. Of course, in a shorter day, students may not need to go, but we certainly want to make our bathrooms available. And we will put procedures in place whereas no teacher will ever have more than 1 child from their room out at the bathroom at any given moment, and that we have systems in place which we will teach students in the opening days when we return to in-person learning so that the students are able to stand on 6-foot markers if there's multiple children in need of the bathroom at any one time, but no more than 2 children will be allowed in a given bathroom at one time, and there'll be a clear visual and model for students to use so that they know if there's other children in bathrooms. We've also put up, as John has referenced, plexiglass in between sinks and urinals to just add another layer of safety for all of our students. And again, the procedures will be very similar, but based on the needs and the layouts of our individual buildings.
All right, Eileen, I just kind of want you to put a voice to the whole AM/PM placement thing and teacher changes thing. I know that a lot of parents have anxiety about it. I mean, you guys as principals have anxiety about it. You don't want anyone to lose their teacher. You don't want anybody to go through that, but kind of explain why we can't take the individual requests and the process you guys are going through trying to juggle all of this.
First and foremost, we've made a commitment to keep families together. And so every time we move a child that's looking at their siblings and the impact that that has, we are also continuing to do what we always do when we develop class placements, is to maintain balanced classes to the greatest extent possible. So that's why a certain student may be placed in the morning or afternoon, but often those students are connected to 1 or more siblings. That sibling piece within our buildings is something that we really are not swaying on. We are very committed to that. We also need to look at individual needs of students, whether it's special education or other types of needs, to make sure that we are able to meet those using the half-day hybrid model. We wish we could take parent requests. We are all working parents, and we understand the struggles that our parents are going through. And believe me, we are going to do our best to limit the number of children who might need to make a teacher change to the smallest group possible. We will offer any supports that are necessary to help students with that change.
All right, let's keep moving along because like I said, I do want to leave time here for just kind of general questions. Dale, you get some of the first here. Is the district considering any sort of COVID waiver, anything that parents are going to have to sign, a general liability waiver before kids get sent back to school?
Not to my knowledge. That's not something that we're investigating or pursuing right now.
Okay. And I think this one is just a situational thing. If teachers need to quarantine for whatever reason, they're sick, somebody in their family is sick, something like that, would they still teach their class? I guess it just depends on their condition, and it's more of an individual basis sort of thing, right?
Correct. There's a bunch of different scenarios that would fall into play there. If the entire class is quarantined, which no one wants to see or think about, but there's a chance that something like that could happen, then the class could go remote as a class. But if the students are on site and the teacher is ill for other reasons, we still have teachers that will need time off for their own things that are happening in their lives. Those would still result in guest teachers, or what parents would know as substitutes, that would be there for their students.
Okay. This could be for anybody, and maybe more for Ryan and Sari, as we kind of look long picture and think longer term. We're in a pandemic. Everything is unpredictable. These are the dates that we're starting in, but right now there is no by this date every kid will be back thing. We're taking more of an approach of start here, see where the world goes, keep fine tuning and building our plan, right? Is that what you'd say from maybe a larger board perspective?
So, I mean, I think that's generally correct. I mean, we're trying to make sure that we're phasing in small groups of students over time to ensure that the effectiveness of the return, the safety levels are maintained, and smaller groups and smaller populations are always good to start off with as we build to our confidence level that's necessary. I would say that we're constantly looking at the metrics, the numbers, the risk mitigations, any new things that come out, either information related to school-age children, or new mitigations and new ways to control the risk of COVID as we go along. All of those things have an impact to future plans. And as with anything in this pandemic, it's, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding that. So we felt it best, I think, as an administration and as a board, to really take, I think, steps in a thorough or in a thoughtful and intentional manner, while we minimize the amount of variables at any given time as we add students to the classrooms, to make sure that absolutely nothing was missed, and that we're doing this in the safest manner possible.
Sari, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I think that's completely accurate.
Okay. Danielle, back to you. Some more questions have popped up. The intention right now is to allow for another potential choice in December, or that would be the next kind of exit ramp, let's say, for a larger change to the system. If we go through with that, there is the potential for a teacher change possibly again, right? As people keep changing their instructional model, the system needs to change.
Yeah, there's always potential, and certainly we can't make any guarantees because we're trying to remain fluid and flexible throughout this pandemic, as people have said before. But I think to Eileen's point earlier, the principals are working very, very hard to minimize those for students, because we understand that stability matters.
Okay, this might be more Joanna. The view on mask breaks, both for general and special ed. Maybe this is a chance for you to get into any special ed considerations that haven't been touched on, but how many mask breaks during the day? I don't think we have a particular number, but what will be the philosophy of that?
Yeah, I mean, based on the amount of time kids are in school, if there needs to be a mask break, this can be taken outside, right? We know that we can schedule those. We have certain students that have an accommodation that we absolutely will be upholding and working for individual circumstances. We'll be working with teachers depending upon their grade level. We're going to basically work, like I said, if there's individual needs, we will accommodate them, and we'll work with our teachers to see what they feel is appropriate for their students and their grade level.
John, some transportation questions have come up. Right now, the plan is to provide busing for everybody that is obligated to get busing from the district. At the moment, we are not offering paid busing. Is that still the plan?
We continue to evaluate that. The challenge with busing is that we have a very limited number of students that we can transport and transport them safely. So as our ability to open that up is permitted, based on the number of riders that we see coming, that's something that we continue to evaluate. But really, the challenge and the issue for us is that we have to dramatically reduce the number of students that we seat on our buses.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of second on that a little bit, that this was a big discussion with our medical experts related to it. And I would just point out that, buses are a challenge, I think, for every district. And to John's point, we need to minimize the number of students that are on there. And we have obligations, obviously, and we understand that some parents have challenges related to the scheduling, potentially, of getting their students to school. But I would highly recommend that if you have the ability to get your child to school on your own, I would take that option. We're going to make buses as safe as humanly possible, and we're going to put, you know, the right tools in place for ventilation and physical distancing, but there are limits to what we can do related to the buses.
And I would just add to Ryan that one of the questions that's come across my desk several times over the last several months is, you know, why not just get more buses, or why not just get more drivers? You know, much like Dale has articulated, there are challenges with the teacher shortage. We're constantly faced with the difficulty of finding drivers, even when we weren't in the situation of a pandemic. So we just don't have the buses, and we don't have the drivers to add more and more routes.
This is kind of an open question for anyone that wants to take it. I might be zeroing in on Joanna here. We have heard of some families that have some travel plans in the coming months. If you travel outside of Illinois for over 24 hours, what kind of exclusion applies to you? Do you fall under the 10-day period? Does it depend on where you've gone? I know your chart addresses some of this.
Dale can help in and jump me out if he feels I'm not giving the correct answer. But currently, we would be excluding children who travel outside of the country to what I think the correct term, Dale, is the Zone 3 or Level 3 travel warning.
Level 3 warning.
But not currently for Lake County. There's certainly recommended travel exclusions, but not mandated exclusions. That's Cook County and the city of Chicago. Those are required quarantines, but we would be requiring a quarantine if you're traveling outside of the country, and you'll see that on our self-certification.
And I can clarify the out of the country issue. Basically, if you look at the planet as a whole, from last check, there were maybe a dozen countries that weren't at travel 3 warning or higher. And most of those are islands in the Pacific Ocean. So if you're traveling anywhere, you can expect a 14-day mandatory quarantine when you come back, that you won't be allowed, students won't be allowed back in, staff won't be allowed back in. So you're going to need to plan accordingly for that.
Okay. This could be Eileen, Joanna. The plan right now, will students be allowed to bring backpacks? What are students, you know, we communicated yesterday that on the first day back, they're going to bring that to-go bin they got going home. What else are they allowed to bring with them to school?
So I'll start. Students can bring backpacks. We're going to really encourage parents to limit what goes in them, only the essentials. Part of the reason that we have put these together, these to-go bins, was to address at-home learning and in person. Those bins will stay at school and be next to the children's desk, so they have all of their own supplies. So if we're playing a math game with dice, they have their own dice, no sharing of materials whatsoever. If the teachers need to send home pages from the math workbook, they're going to tear them out and have the students bring them in their backpack in a to-go folder, but really limiting what they need to bring back and forth to just those essential items, if it's cold weather, a jacket, and things of that nature.
Okay. You know, seasonal allergies are going to pop up a lot. And I know this has been discussed a little bit today, but, you know, there are some families that have written in, you know, my kid has this condition. I'm not sure if you guys know about it. Joanna, maybe this is you. I would think the advice on that would be contact your school nurse and make sure everything is up to date. So right away, I mean, there's a lot of boxes that fall into that COVID purview.
Yeah, so we reach out to us, please, now and find out if we have that documented. We want to have documentation of it. You know, what we're recommending is that your physician basically say, you know, this child has this medical condition, which may result in these symptoms, which also mimic COVID symptoms. And now with the update, basically, you know, there's certain things that you may have to check on the self-certification, but if it's, like I said, the ones that have been clarified as a new runny nose, you know, if that's something that your child has every day because of their documented allergies, which we have on file, you would not have to check that because that's not new for them. That's something they have every day because of their medical condition. If, you know, and obviously, like I said, we're relying on a community effort here with parents being honest and transparent. If that is not something that is typical based on their current documented condition, then we do need you to check the box based on whatever else they're presenting with. But yes, please reach out. We need documentation, get it to us ahead of time. That way our nurses can make sure we've got everything in order, because what we're doing, and like I said, you'll be getting detailed information about that certification process, is as that information comes into us, we basically have multiple lists on our end. We know the students that did not have their self-certification completed. We know which students did, and that's something we need to immediately follow up on. And then we know the students that are cleared and are ready to proceed with entering our buildings.
Okay. And as long as the weather cooperates right now, this might be more Eileen, you will be encouraging teachers to have outside opportunities when possible, right? That's still going to be an option until the weather turns.
Yes, we've also, our instructional coaches have even looked with teachers and planning, like what are content areas, or maybe a lesson, maybe if it's a read aloud where you can easily take your class outside and do those lessons. And so if we can provide those opportunities, and our job as the principals to make sure that it's done in a way that's safe, so we have the proper social distancing, and so we can be marking off our playground areas, our blacktops, our fields, so that we can have groups of students in areas that provide that appropriate distancing. But yes, we're encouraging teachers to be able to go outside for some of their instruction.
Okay. Dale, if you want to move on to the next slide, we do want to be respectful of everybody's time since it is 11 o'clock on a Saturday. So we want to thank everybody for joining us for this hour. We got to at least 65 questions. I know there were some duplicates and we answered a bunch more, but there's still dozens more in here. We will copy those. We will review them. We will add them to our FAQ. Before you type out your question, though, please take a look at dps109.org/reentry. There you've got the updated FAQ. You've got these school exclusion scenarios that Joanna just went over. You have the great video that Danielle put out the other day explaining the hybrid model. Eileen started in a video yesterday showing you the safety protocols at Wilmot and some of the other buildings. And then we do have that updated 41-page document with the new exclusion scenarios, the new dates, all of the new information. It's all available to you, all available for you to consider before Monday at 9 a.m. And if you want to go to the last slide, Dale, that is the important thing to remember. Monday, 9 a.m. is when the survey closes. We need everybody to participate. Again, if you do not fill it out, we will default to what you had picked back in that late July, early August survey. So make sure that, especially if you want to change the course that your child is on, that you fill this out by Monday at 9 a.m. This town hall has been recorded. It will go up on the DPS website. It's also been live streamed on Facebook. Unless Facebook has changed in the last day, which happens sometimes, that recording should be kept there right now, so you can go back and share that. But I want to thank our panel, thank everybody today. We know this is a tough process for everybody. We know that not every question has been answered, and we apologize for that. I mean, there's just flying in at a breakneck pace here, but we're doing our best to keep up with them. Please feel free to reach out to your principals with any specific building level questions, and everyone have a great Saturday.
Thank you.